I wonder if that could come with some different music.
Yeah, I know, right? It's the same one every time.
It's okay. Hi, everyone. It's Whitney Wiley, and that is Robert Hilliard, and we are here with you with the state of leadership, simple and beyond. How's it going, Robert?
It's going well. Really good. I'm really excited about this topic.
Uh, I know, right? It takes me back to school days. So
Yeah. It does.
let's get started. So we're going to be talking about this concept of whether the office's factory model is broken, and so it is prompted by an article in in LinkedIn, here in LinkedIn, um, by one of the editors, and I should have probably written her name down. Um, no, it's from the New Yorker, right?
New
The
Yorker, yeah.
article's from the New Yorker,
Mhm.
and the article that prompted this conversation is "Going to the Office: A Broken Way of Working," and the answer again is not so much about whether at least in my mind, it's not so much about whether we should be doing virtual work, remote work, some hybrid, or in the office, but the mindset that is pushing for I would say, a work model that is not really in alignment with where we are with technology, and that we are not producing widgets, right? A lot of this work that we're talking about is intellectual in nature. It is service in nature. So it's not producing hard things, and it's not selling products in a location where you need to actually have people there. So, what is the management model that is driving moving things back to the office rather than a conversation about whether we should or should not be in or out of the office? So, that's the way I'm looking at it. What about you?
Pretty much the same. It's the office as factory model that we've employed as a country for many years, and we see a lot of the tech, some people in the tech industry, companies in the tech industry, starting to move away from that. And usually when an organization or an industry moves away from something and they do it successfully, it sends out those ripple effects, and other organizations in different industries will follow suit. So I think it's very interesting and timely. This is one of the dead horses that I'm always beating. I'm always talking about the US's outmoded management model. So I was like, yay, we're sort of talking about this. This is in my wheelhouse.
So it made me think of, I'm still trying to figure out how wedded I am to this, but scientific management, right? The Taylor scientific management, and I just wanted to let me see if I can find. I tried to put everything here on my desktop so I would have it ready to go, but it made me think of some of the aspects of that model. Do you remember that from school?
I don't. I don't. I don't. But doesn't mean I can't find it. You know how I.
No. So the basis of Taylor's scientific principles were that that it was about optimizing the way you do work rather than having it be about like pushing production in a different way. And
Right.
so the four main principles is you use scientific methods to determine and standardize the best way of doing a job, a clear division of tasks and responsibilities, high pay for high performing employees. I know this is coming back to you, in a hierarchy of authority and strict surveillance of employees. And so when I'm thinking about this, there are aspects of it that make sense, aspects that don't. right? And ultimately, it seems like we just have gotten to a place where if we figure out the best way to do the work, that's the way we should be doing the work.
Right.
All right. Rather than I need you to be in a particular place to do the work, rather than letting you be in the best place for you to do the work that needs to
Well,
get done.
well, it's management saying that I need you in the, where I want you to work so I can keep an eye on you, which brings, which opens up a whole, can of worms. Why do you need to keep an eye on that person? Are you micromanaging that person? Which is not the best management style at all, unless you're working in a high risk environment. But there are a lot of managers that think that that is the only management style to use because it works. It works, but there's this serious cost to that. And we know that you should only micromanage when it's a life or death situation. The house is on fire, right? So you don't need to do that. But a lot of managers, that's all they know. The other thing is with, knowledge work, which is the term that was used in the article. I think Chris Hurd was the one that they interviewed in the New Yorker, and it was knowledge work he talked about. And that's, it's work that uses or that produces a unique type of knowledge. And that, people like lawyers like yourself, and OD.
Coaches like yourself.
Coaches, yes, thank you. OD, like both of us.
OD.
It's knowledge work. And to do this type of work, as we know, we do not need to be in a physical office. Right. And so this is really taking hold in a lot of the tech industry. And one of the things that they mentioned in this article was that, which harkens back to what we talked about last week, was the whole Apple thing. According to this article, they've actually put their plans to bring people back into the office on hold until January, because there's a lot of other organizations that are saying, you know what, don't need to be there in person. We're going to a whole different model. And so it's already, now whether or not that holds is one thing, but already it's starting, that ripple effect is starting to take hold. It's very interesting.
Well, the other thing is, and I don't want to go down this route today, but some of the things that are being brought up is that the insistence of having people co-located and in a particular location at that affects the ability to have some of the other things that companies claim that they want, right? Which is diversity. And we're talking about all kinds of diversity. And it limits you to people who are willing to work in your location. Whereas if you are willing to have a virtual workforce, you can tap the talent pool around the globe and actually find the best person or the best people for the job, for the work, rather than those people who are willing to come, to a particular location.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to limit the pool of talent you can tap into to your general location, where organizations, and that's what they say in the article, organizations that embrace this, remote first kind of model will be able to get better talent because they'll be looking globally when a lot of other organizations will be looking locally. And that's going to be the thing that's going to be the, the arm, the twist of the arm that's going to make other organizations follow suit. It also talked about an organization that went from shifting its model. It went from having, it didn't really shift its model, but leveraged the remote model. I think it was in this article. I've been reading a lot of articles about this, but one company I read about went from having 8 employees to 800 employees. That's how, and they were able to scale like that in quite, only a few months, because they were looking at just growing based on the, people's desire to work from home. And so it's amazing what some organizations have been able to do.
So, again, about this factory, we don't, we just for those people who are not producing something physical, the bottom line is you just have to give it some thought. Now, so here's the interesting thing. I have a client. We keep talking about the shoulds, right? She's very much saying, well, she says her manager is a micromanager and she should do this. And it's like, you know what? That's not how that's not how the world works.
No.
It's not a matter of whether she should or shouldn't do something. She very well should. But if that's not happening, you have to deal with what is, right? And so we find ourselves in a place where one would want to say management, leadership should want what's best for the employee in order to get from the employee their best, their highest, and increase productivity, which in theory increases your bottom line, right? And so here's the interesting thing. We're talking about this article that came out a few days ago. And then I wake up this morning and there is another article by Carolyn Fairchild, who is a LinkedIn editor. And she's written this piece that says executives want to go back to the office. The rest of us don't. Here's why that's a problem. And so we just keep ending up in sort of the same place. So it's management and there are some frontline workers, there are some people who are non-executives, non-management. There are some who want to go back to work. But I'm going to share some of the statistics. It says that the key findings of a new survey by Future Forum, a group launched by Slack to assist companies as they reimagine work, and that's what we're talking about, right? The future of work. More than 2/3 of all executives want to work in the office most or all of the time, while only 17% of remote employees feel the same way. And some 75% of executives that say they want to work from home want to do it in the office 3 to 5 days a week versus only 34% of employees who want to do that. So there's this huge disparity about that. And there are a couple of things that probably account for this. One is the nature of who's in executive positions in most companies, right? And when we look at that, they would tend to be older. They're going to tend to be white men, right, for the most part, who the statistics say are married, who have wives who can take care of all the things that most employees are taking care of themselves, right? And they're in 2-income households and someone needs to be there to take care of the kids. Whereas if you're an executive in a company and you have a spouse who can handle all that, you don't have to worry about sort of the everyday issues of life. And having flexibility in your job, in your work situation, allows you to handle things that need to be handled. And so we're going to look at this sort of in a vacuum, right? Because we've talked about this before, the difference in laws about how employees can and cannot work, particularly non-exempt employees. And I live in California, a little more pro-worker than a lot of places.
Sure.
And so the protections here that, and to some degree, restrictions on what non-exempt employees can do and trading off time and, working outside of their work hours and that kind of, those are very real issues that companies have to deal with. And I'm not going to pretend like that isn't out there. Those are not insurmountable. They're just issues that need to be addressed. But if you've got leadership on the whole, or mostly on the whole, according to these statistics, that have just a whole different worldview about what's going on, this disconnect is creating sort of what's happening in the workforce right now.
You know, when you were talking about that, the thing that jumped into my mind in the mentality, it seems, is a lot of like parents, right? Parents, when you say, you know, parents want to do what's best for their children, right? But they don't listen to their children. So what they're doing may not really be what's best, even though the intention is good.
Yes.
And, you know, they're not looking at, you know, how times have changed, how generations are different, how technology is different. They're only looking at it from their lens. And it seems that that's what the executives are doing. I think it was very interesting that, you know, I looked at this, the article from the New Yorker when I was reading it. Chris Hurd was the one they were talking about in there. He's young, he's 31, right? So it makes sense that he's like, no, we're not going back to the office. And I got away with that. You know, I did away with that when, you know, on my first company, I think he's on company number 3 already or something like that. I'm not really sure. But, you know, serial entrepreneur, you know, mover and shaker. But I think you hit the nail right on the head. I would venture to say that most of these executives are older, you know, white men, or, you know, old, or definitely from a certain generation who maybe come from a 2-income household, but certainly make enough money that they can pay for maid service, you know,
Childcare,
private
schools,
nanny,
all
so
of that.
that the people that work for them cannot. And I think that's a very interesting, and I'd like to take a look at some of the demographics around that. But I think you're right on target with that. And I think that's the issue, is people are not seeing. It's the same thing we were talking about not too long ago, about executives' view of the culture of the organization is different than the view that the people that work, the frontline staff, have of that organization. The culture can be vastly different. And having those conversations and trying to get them to see things differently can be, you know, very difficult.
Yeah, it's hard to I think, put yourself into someone else's shoes, and maybe it's not hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes, but if you don't put yourself in someone else's shoes, I guess it's hard for you to see the difference between how you are viewing the world, right? And if your world is, and I'm not saying being an executive is easy, but if your world outside of work is sort of taken care of for you, you just have a different perspective about the whole thing. And then there goes on further. There are some differences in cultures, right? So it said they did some looking at the numbers. It says that the where am I? Sorry. So they're talking about this concept of the executive, who's in the executive ranks, right? And so they are people that have grown up generally in companies where they were at the office, right? So that becomes the world. That's how work gets done. That's, for them, that is culture. That is the culture, right? That's how work gets done. You come to the office, you get your work done, you leave and go home. You have a different generation that is saying, but I've grown up with this device in my hand, right? I've grown up with technology. I can get work done anywhere. I always have, from the time I was in kindergarten through college. Yeah. I've been doing my work wherever I was, this kind of work wherever I've been. And so that again becomes a demarcation between sort of the worldviews, because I show up to a place to get work done, whereas you have a different mindset of people say, well, I can get work done anywhere. So now they want to bring that to the workplace, at least to their work, and it's not being looked at favorably.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
I think it's very interesting how we've gotten the younger generation involved in technology much earlier than our generation, right? And they're way more savvy, technologically savvy than we were at that age, and sometimes are now. But yet when they get into the workforce, they're told to get rid of all of that. Now you're going to come in here and count widgets. So we're kind of being disingenuous, to them. It's like, we're saying we're big on technology, big on technology, big on technology. Do all the stuff remote as much as you can. And there are some schools that were doing remote learning before the pandemic. I talked to a friend of mine's son, and I was like, "Oh, how are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I was doing stuff remote with some of my teachers before the pandemic, so this wasn't a big shift goes to a private school." But it's very interesting. And so then we get them in the workforce, and we're back in the 1950s, right? Because it's all those people that cut their teeth, back in the day, decades ago, who were still in charge. I think it's going to be very interesting to see the shift when the younger generation starts taking over those executive roles. That's going to bring with it, other challenges, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to take care of this whole remote work challenge.
I agree with you. I think that will be, and as people who studied, remotely, and have a working relationship remotely, I certainly can see that. So here's the other thing. It says about change, right? And one of the reasons, or one of the things that you hear a lot about qualities of leaders, is their ability to adapt to change.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's how we've always done it, right? This is a phrase that I've heard throughout my career. That's how we've always done it. And but
it isn't that a dichotomy that's like really weird, because that's supposed to be what they're about, but that is what you hear a lot.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I think what happens with a lot of those leaders is they're open to change when it only affects them. but when it takes a certain amount of risk taking to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to apply this change globally to my organization,
right?
And a lot of courage, and I will applaud leaders that step on the brake first before initiating change, because you have to say, look, is this going to make things better, right? If you just start making change to make change, you introduce chaos, right?
That's true.
So you want to do it in a way that's making your organization better. But a lot of times, and we know that people automatically, the analogy I use, you hand somebody a briefcase full, with $1 million, they'll probably 99% of people will hesitate to take it. Yeah, right. And I hope to be in a position once to be able to hand somebody $1 million.
Or be handed $1 million.
Or be handed $1 million. But, so people resist change, but why are you resisting that change? That's the real question, why? And if the answer is, well, we've always done it this way, those are the organizations that usually get left behind, because they're not paying attention to the changes that are going on around them. I think which is very interesting that, we had that discussion about Apple, and then a week later I read that Apple is like kind of changing their mind a little bit and delaying their decision because they're paying attention to what's going on, it seems. And that's what's really important. And smart leaders will do that. They'll look at what's going on in the outside environment. They don't function in a vacuum. They'll understand what's going on and then say, okay, this looks like the direction that business is going in, let's think about moving in that direction. And the ones that go, well, this is how we've always done it, they usually get stuck, and they usually we saw it happen in the pandemic. Organizations just were not paying attention.
Yeah.
And the ones that were paying attention were able to do okay. The ones that were like, we're going to wait and see what happens, those guys, they just got obliterated. And it's unfortunate.
So I want to share this. So this Slack research, there was a survey of 10,000 knowledge workers around the world. And it suggests that office environments simply don't work for many underrepresented groups.
Mm-hmm.
And employees of color in particular have expressed an increased sense of belonging while working remotely. So here's an interesting thing, right? We are touting, or companies are touting the virtues of diversity, inclusion, equity, and inclusion, right? And one of the ways to do that is by having the flexibility of how you're working, or how your people are working, right? And so they're going to have to look at this in a larger sense. And that it's not just, again, it's not just about, are we working remotely or are we in the office? That's not the issue. It's about the whole mindset around work, and the things that we're espousing are of value to us. It goes on to say that when respondents were asked if they agreed with statements like, I am treated fairly at work, or management is supportive, that Black employees were 30% more likely to agree to that statement in August of 2021 than they were in August 2020. So there's this change, because I think on some level, the playing field is leveled, right? When you are sort of out of sight, out of mind, and you're just getting your work done, as opposed to being in the office where my biases, implicit, or whatever, have an impact on how I see how people are working, or what it is they're actually doing.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting way to look at it. It's thought provoking what you just said, and I think it's very.
Try.
No, you did a fantastic job. Or how much is that people were actually being appreciated because the power dynamic shifted, right? It's like, I really don't want this person to leave my organization and go to another organization now during this time of crisis, so I'm going to treat them a little better. I wonder how much of that is at play too.
It certainly could be.
Yeah. So
gender plays a part in it too. 80% of women currently working remote want flexible or hybrid work, compared to only 79% of men. So
that's yeah. We don't have to mince that. We know what's going on there. But
I think that goes to another issue that hopefully over time we'll talk about as this continues, is that how there's going to be with a hybrid workforce, which I think ultimately is the future of work, is a hybrid workforce, will be who gets the promotions, who gets the benefits. And it's probably going to be those people who are in office because they're being seen and heard in ways that the others won't. And so then you'll be put in a position where you have to decide, do I want the perks that come with being seen? If it's not going to be a level playing field and it's just on its merits, because, Angela, it has decided to work in the office. So the boss sees her in the office, right? The boss sees her. That means she's more like me, right? She thinks more like me. She's here in the office. I'm connecting with her because she's here. Whereas the person who's working remotely may actually be doing a better job, but because I'm not seeing them, there's no proximity, right? That I am not as willing to give the benefits, the perks that come with my seeing you on a regular basis. Those will not be as forthcoming for those people. So does that create, like this two-tiered system of employees?
Yeah, and this is something that we really haven't talked about, and I'm hoping that we can in the future about, office politics and how much that plays in someone's career. I've never been one to play office politics, which is why I now work for myself. But I know some people that we would watch them, and I'm sure you saw it too. Not nearly as talented as other people, but politic themselves because they were, they put themselves in positions, where they could, help out, or they knew what, what keys to press, what made the leader tick. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. Most leaders love having their ego stroked. I mean, they do, and those
most people do.
Absolutely.
I'll concede that.
Yeah, and then those people that are successfully doing that, who have that face time, will have a leg up on those other people that aren't going to do that. And so I think a lot goes into the mix here. So you're right. I think hybrid is going to be the way of the future. Before we hopefully we'll be able to see this go 100% remote for most jobs, or mostly remote. And I wonder how that's going to play into things, how it's going to affect people's career in the long term.
Well, we will continue to keep this conversation going. We'll be exploring some other things as we see interesting topics about leadership happening in the news. We'll be bringing them to you here on the State of Leadership. And if there's something that you would be interested in us covering, let us know. And so we are here every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, talking all things leadership. So thank you for joining us for this discussion, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Absolutely. Thanks.